the moment before everything changes. This is not just another story you listen to and forget. This is not background noise for a tired mind scrolling for distraction. This moment, right now, stands at a quiet crossroads. There are moments in life that arrive without warning. They don't announce themselves with chaos or drama. They come softly, almost unnoticed, like a pause between breaths. A moment where everything slows down just enough for a single thought to surface. Is this really the life I'm meant to live? Most people silence that question immediately. They distract themselves. They get busy. They scroll. They sleep. They promise to think about it later. But later rarely comes. Right now, imagine the world around you fades just a little. The noise lowers. The expectations loosen their grip. For the first time in a long while, you're not running toward anything or away from anything. You're simply here, with yourself. And in that stillness, a truth begins to rise. Life doesn't change by accident. It doesn't transform because of luck, coincidence, or waiting long enough. The life you end up living is shaped by the decisions you make or avoid every single day. This is not a story meant to flatter you. It's not here to comfort you with excuses. It's here to wake you up. Because if something inside you feels restless, if there's a quiet dissatisfaction you can't quite name, if you sense that you were meant for more than repetition, survival, and good enough, then this story is already speaking to you. And it begins with one brutally honest question. The question we avoid. There comes a time in every person's life when pretending stops working, not because everything falls apart, but because everything stays the same. You wake up, you follow routines, you fulfill responsibilities. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. You're functioning, you're surviving. Maybe you're even succeeding by someone else's definition. But deep down, there's a weight you can't explain. A sense that days are passing faster than they should. A feeling that weeks blur together, that years slip by while something essential remains untouched. So let's ask the question most people are afraid to face. If your life ended tomorrow, would you be proud of how you lived it? Not of what you planned to do, not of what you hoped to become, but of what you actually did. Most people don't answer right away. They hesitate. They negotiate with the thought. They soften it. They say, I still have time. But time is not a promise. It's a loan, one that can be taken back without notice. And when people finally answer honestly, many realize something unsettling. They've been living on autopilot. They didn't choose this life deliberately. They drifted into it. They adjusted. They settled. They became comfortable with postponing their potential. It's not that they lack dreams. It's that they buried them under routine. They told themselves they'd start later, when things were easier, when circumstances improved, when confidence magically appeared. But years passed, and later quietly turned into never. This isn't about failure. It's about unclaimed possibility. There is a version of you that exists beyond fear, beyond hesitation, beyond the limits you've accepted as truth. And that version has been waiting patiently, watching every time you chose safety over growth, familiarity over courage. The hardest part isn't realizing you want more. The hardest part is admitting you've been the one holding yourself back. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because change demands responsibility, and responsibility can be uncomfortable. It forces you to confront the gap between who you are and who you could be. And once you see that gap clearly, you can't unsee it. That's when the discomfort begins to grow, because staying the same starts to hurt more than the fear of change. And that is where transformation truly begins. The comfortable lie of excuses. Once the discomfort appears, most people don't act on it. They explain it away. They tell themselves a story, one that sounds reasonable, even logical, a story that protects them from the pain of responsibility. They say it's not the right time. They say they're too young to be taken seriously or too old to start over. They say money is the problem, time is the problem, other people are the problem. Excuses rarely sound like lies. That's why they're so dangerous. They sound responsible, mature, practical. They disguise themselves as realism. But beneath every excuse is the same quiet message: I'm not ready to take full ownership of my life. Excuses offer comfort. They remove pressure. They allow you to stay exactly where you are while convincing yourself you're being reasonable. And the longer you repeat them, the more convincing they become. Soon, they don't even feel like excuses anymore. They feel like facts. You start building your identity around them. I'm just not that kind of person. People like me don't get those opportunities. That world isn't meant for someone like me. And without realizing it, you shrink your future to fit your fear. What's rarely acknowledged is this: excuses don't appear when something is impossible. They appear when something is uncomfortable. Change demands effort. It demands consistency. It demands facing uncertainty without guarantees. Excuses step in to protect you from that discomfort. They whisper, "Stay here, it's safer." And so days pass, weeks pass, years pass. Life doesn't fall apart, but it doesn't move forward either. This is how dreams don't die dramatically. They fade quietly. Why most people never move forward. Most people don't fail because they lack intelligence. They don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they never truly begin. They think about changing, they talk about changing, they plan to change, but when the moment comes to act, they hesitate. Action requires friction. It disrupts comfort. It challenges identity. And for many, that discomfort feels heavier than regret, at least in the short term. So instead of taking responsibility, they complain. They complain about circumstances, about unfair systems, about people who seem luckier, richer, more successful. Complaining feels productive without being dangerous. It gives the illusion of effort without requiring courage. Meanwhile, the people who do change rarely look special in the beginning. They don't have perfect confidence. They don't have everything figured out. What separates them is not talent, it's movement. They act before they feel ready. They move while others wait for clarity. And slowly, momentum begins to build. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Waiting for motivation is a trap. Motivation follows action, not the other way around. The longer you wait to feel ready, the longer your life stays on pause. And the world does not stop moving just because you do. Every day you delay is a decision. Every excuse is a choice. Every moment of inaction quietly shapes the future you'll wake up to. Not deciding is still deciding. And one day, without realizing it, people look back and wonder how their life became something they never consciously chose. That's how most people get stuck, not in failure, but in familiarity. They don't lose everything. They simply never claim what was possible. And unless something interrupts that pattern, tomorrow will look exactly like today, only closer to the end than the beginning. The debt we never talk about. There are sacrifices in your life that were made long before you were aware of them. They didn't come with speeches. They weren't recorded or applauded. They happened quietly, in the background, day after day. Think about your parents. not as authority figures, not as expectations, but as people. There was a time when they were young, uncertain, and full of unfinished dreams, and somewhere along the way, many of those dreams were set aside, not because they lacked ambition, but because responsibility arrived. Your mother carried more than just a child. She carried exhaustion, fear, hope, and determination all at once. Nights without rest, days without recognition. She gave parts of herself without asking for anything in return. Your father carried pressure silently, long hours, heavy worries, the constant responsibility of providing, protecting, and staying strong even when he felt anything but strong. They didn't do these things for praise. They did them so you could have choices. And now time has passed. They don't ask for much. Often they say they're fine, that you don't need to worry. But beneath that reassurance is something unspoken, a hope that your life will be lighter than theirs was. This isn't about guilt, it's about awareness. There comes a moment when adulthood is no longer about freedom alone. It becomes about responsibility with purpose. Not obligation, but intention. Becoming someone who can give back, not just financially, but emotionally. Someone who brings peace instead of worry, stability instead of uncertainty. This realization changes something, because suddenly your effort isn't only for you anymore, and that makes quitting much harder. The habits that shape destiny. People often believe their future will change when circumstances change. More money, more time, more opportunities. But the truth is far less dramatic and far more powerful. Your future is being built quietly, right now, by your habits. Not the big decisions you make once in a lifetime, but the small choices you repeat every day. How you begin your mornings, what you do when no one is watching, where your attention goes when you're tired, bored, or stressed. Habits are invisible architects. They shape your identity long before they shape your results. A few hours lost each day may not feel dangerous, but repeated daily, they become years. The problem isn't rest or enjoyment. The problem is unconscious repetition. When time is treated casually, life responds the same way. Meanwhile, people who change their lives don't necessarily work harder. They work deliberately. They choose what they consume, what they focus on, what they practice. They understand that discipline is not punishment, it's self-respect. Every habit you build is a vote for the person you're becoming, and once you see that clearly, comfort begins to feel expensive. Because the question is no longer, what do I feel like doing today? It becomes, who do I want to be 5 years from now? And whether you realize it or not, you're already answering that question every single day. The price most people are unwilling to pay. At some point, the conversation gets uncomfortable. Because once you understand habits, once you understand responsibility, one question remains. How badly do you actually want this? Not in words, not in intentions, but in sacrifice. Growth has a cost, and it always shows up before the reward. It shows up when the alarm rings early and no one is watching, when your friends are relaxing and you're choosing to work, when comfort invites you in and discipline asks you to walk away. There's an old story about a young man who desperately wanted to change his life. He searched for answers until he found someone he believed had them. When he asked how to achieve success, the mentor didn't give advice. He led him into the ocean. Step by step, they walked deeper into the water. Then suddenly the mentor pushed the young man's head beneath the surface. Panic set in. The body fought back. Every instinct screamed for air. When the mentor finally released him, the young man gasped, shaking, confused, and angry. The mentor asked one simple question. When you were underwater, what did you want more than anything? The answer was obvious: to breathe. The mentor nodded and said, when you want success as badly as you wanted air, nothing will stop you. That lesson is uncomfortable because it exposes the truth. Most people want change, but not badly enough to be inconvenienced by it. They want results without disruption, growth without discomfort, success without sacrifice. But life doesn't work that way. Everything meaningful demands something in return: time, energy, focus, comfort. And until you're willing to pay that price, change will always feel just out of reach. Not because it's impossible, but because you're negotiating with it. The environment that makes or breaks you. Even with discipline, even with desire, one force remains incredibly powerful: your environment. No matter how strong you think you are, the people around you shape your standards slowly, subtly, relentlessly. Look honestly at your circle, not with resentment, not with superiority, but with clarity. Do the people closest to you inspire growth or excuse stagnation? Do they speak about possibility or constantly reinforce limitation? Do they challenge you to rise or pull you back toward what feels familiar? You don't become like the best people you know. You become like the people you spend the most time with. When negativity surrounds you, it becomes normal. When ambition is mocked, you begin to shrink your goals to avoid standing out. When comfort is praised, discipline feels extreme. And without realizing it, you start editing yourself. People who transform their lives understand this truth early or learn it painfully. They become selective, not cold, not cruel, selective. They protect their focus, they guard their mindset. They choose environments that demand more from them, not less. Sometimes that means distance. Sometimes that means uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes that means walking alone for a while. But growth has never been a group activity. If the room you're in requires you to stay small to belong, then the cost of staying is far greater than the discomfort of leaving. Your future is shaped by what you tolerate daily. Failure is not the end, it's the entry point. Failure is one of the most misunderstood experiences in life. Most people fear it not because it destroys them, but because of what they believe it says about who they are. They see failure as proof of inadequacy, as confirmation that they were never meant for more. But that belief is learned, and it's wrong. Every person who has built something meaningful has failed, often repeatedly, and often in ways that were embarrassing, painful, or public. What separates them from everyone else is not avoidance of failure, but their relationship with it. They don't see failure as a verdict. They see it as feedback, a lesson, a data point, a correction. Consider how many times greatness has been preceded by rejection, how often potential was dismissed before it was recognized, how many times progress came only after everything fell apart. Failure doesn't stop you. Refusing to learn from it does. Those who grow understand that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of the process. Each setback sharpens awareness. Each mistake reveals what doesn't work. The only real failure is quitting before the lesson is learned. And here's the quiet truth. The people you admire most didn't avoid failure. They simply stayed long enough for it to transform them. Once you understand this, fear begins to lose its grip. Because failing no longer means you're not enough. It means you're in motion. Mastering the inner world. There's a battle that determines everything, but it happens in silence. Not in the world, not with other people, but inside your own mind. Your thoughts speak before anyone else does. They comment on every action, every mistake, every possibility. And if left unchecked, they will shape your reality more powerfully than any external obstacle. Negative thoughts don't announce themselves as enemies. They sound like reason, like caution, like realism. What if you fail? You're not ready yet. Other people are better than you. Left unchallenged, these thoughts become habits, and mental habits are just as powerful as physical ones. That's why stillness matters. In a world that never stops talking, silence becomes a form of control. When you take time to slow down, to reflect, to breathe, to be alone, you begin to hear your own voice again. Not the noise of comparison, not the pressure of expectation, your voice. This is where awareness is built. The mind is like a field. Whatever you allow to grow will eventually dominate the landscape. Doubt grows if you feed it. Fear grows if you repeat it. But so does confidence, so does belief. People who change their lives learn to interrupt destructive thoughts. They question them, replace them, retrain their attention towards solutions instead of limitations. They don't wait for the mind to cooperate, they train it to. Because once you learn to direct your inner world, the outer world begins to respond. Control the mind, and you begin to reclaim your life. See it before you live it. Every meaningful creation begins twice. First, in the mind, then in the world. Before a life changes on the outside, something shifts internally. A picture forms, not vague hope, but a clear direction. This is the power of visualization. When you allow yourself to imagine a different future in detail, you give your mind a destination. You stop drifting. You start aiming. See yourself doing work that matters to you. See your days structured with intention instead of chaos. See yourself walking with confidence, not because life is easy, but because you know where you're going. Feel it. The pride of progress, the calm that comes from alignment, the quiet satisfaction of building something real. This isn't wishful thinking, it's mental preparation. The mind cannot move to what it cannot see, and once a vision becomes familiar, action feels less foreign. But visualization alone changes nothing. Dreams without discipline remain fantasies. The purpose of seeing your future clearly is not escape, it's direction. It sharpens your choices. It forces you to ask, does this action move me closer or further away? When vision meets action, momentum is born. And once momentum begins, stopping becomes harder than continuing. Small steps that create real change. The mistake most people make is waiting for transformation to feel dramatic. They believe change must arrive all at once, complete, perfect, overwhelming. But real progress is quieter than that. It begins with small decisions taken seriously. 10 minutes of focused effort, 1 page read instead of scrolled past, 1 disciplined choice where you used to avoid effort. These actions seem insignificant in isolation, but repeated consistently, they compound, slowly at first, then suddenly. This is how lives actually change, not through intensity, but through consistency. You don't need to become a new person overnight. You need to become slightly better than yesterday and repeat that process without quitting. Small steps remove pressure. They eliminate excuses. They make progress accessible. And over time, they do something powerful. They change your identity.
You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants change. You become someone who practices it. Momentum grows, confidence follows, discipline becomes familiar. And one day you look back and realize you're no longer chasing the life you imagined, you're living it. Not because of a single breakthrough, but because you honored the small steps when they mattered most.
Taking ownership of your life. There comes a moment when clarity leaves no room for excuses. You see the patterns, you recognize the habits, you understand the cost of staying the same. And in that moment, one truth becomes unavoidable. No one is coming to save you. Not your past, not your circumstances, not the people you blame. Your upbringing may explain your struggles, but it does not excuse surrendering your future. What happened to you shaped you, but it does not define you. Ownership is not about self-blame. It's about self-respect. It's the decision to stop pointing outward and start taking responsibility inward. To accept that where you are now is the result of countless choices, some conscious, some not. And if choices brought you here, choices can take you somewhere else. The world will always offer reasons to stay comfortable. It will reward familiarity. It will normalize mediocrity. But growth begins the moment you refuse to participate in that agreement. You stop waiting for permission. You stop explaining your dreams. You stop negotiating with fear. You act, not because conditions are perfect, because your time matters. When you take ownership of your life, something shifts. You move differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with intention. You no longer live reactively. You live deliberately. And that changes everything. The final decision. Time is not endless. This truth is uncomfortable but necessary. Every day that passes is gone forever. Every delay carries a cost. And one day, sooner than expected, the opportunity to try will disappear. Imagine yourself years from now looking back at this moment. Will you remember it as another time you felt inspired but unchanged, or as the moment you finally decided to act? Because this is what it comes down to. You can continue living on autopilot, doing what feels easy, familiar, and safe, or you can decide that your life deserves more than convenience. Great lives are not built by extraordinary people. They are built by ordinary people who make one extraordinary decision: to stop settling. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for confidence. Stop waiting for approval. The perfect moment does not exist. The only moment that matters is the one you are in right now. Decide to demand more from yourself, not out of pressure, but out of belief. Decide to choose discipline over distraction, growth over comfort, purpose over fear. Write down what changes today, what habits end, what standards rise, what direction you commit to. Then take the first step, small, imperfect, but real. The journey will challenge you. It will test your patience. It will expose your doubts. But it will also reveal your strength. You are not too late. You are not behind. You are not incapable. You are standing at a decision point, and the life you want is waiting on the other side of the choice you make right now. Choose deliberately. Choose courage. Choose to begin. A quiet promise. There is no applause at the beginning. No audience, no validation, no dramatic moment where everything suddenly makes sense. Just a quiet understanding. You don't need to announce your decision to anyone. You don't need to convince the world that you've changed. Real transformation doesn't start loudly. It starts privately. It begins with a promise you make to yourself. A promise to show up even on the days when motivation is absent. a promise to keep going even when progress feels invisible, a promise to choose growth when comfort tries to pull you back. This promise isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. Some days will feel powerful, others will feel heavy, but each step taken with intention is a step away from the life you no longer want and toward the one you're building. No one else needs to understand your path. No one else needs to believe before you do. All that matters is that you remember this moment, the moment you stopped waiting and started becoming. The world doesn't need to know yet, but one day your actions will speak for you. And when that day comes, you'll look back and realize the most important change in your life began quietly with a single decision and a promise you chose to keep.